Hello everyone. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the VOR style approach. We're sitting over here against lovely Connecticut. We've got our target way down here. It's going to be Hartford that we're going to be landing at. So let's go ahead and take a look at an example VOR approach plate. Now VOR is again another one of those approaches which is what I like to consider to be semi-precision. It'll get you there left and right, but it won't necessarily get you there up and down. So we're currently sitting at Rambo intersection. We're going to proceed along the 220 radial until we get to Hartford VOR. Now you probably notice this weird little bold racetrack pattern. That's a hold, but since our radial is going to take us into that hold, we're going to have to do what they call a procedure turn to enter into it. So what we're going to do is we're going to cross this, fly what they call an offset entry, where we're simply going to take a left, go this way, and then swing back around, and then we're going to line up with our final approach course of Tree 4. Notice there's no up and down here. This is a straightforward approach, but our altitude is going to be 2,500 feet when we cross. In the moment we cross the Hartford DME, we're going to have to proceed all the way down to about 1,200 feet and hold until we hopefully get lucky and find the end of the runway. Given visibility being pretty good, I'm not so concerned about this particular approach. Notice down here we have our minimums as usual. It's going to be about 1,200 feet, a mile and a quarter visibility. Obviously the visibility is much better than that in the simulator, just for demonstration purposes. We also can see that we have this beautiful little timing thing down here. If we travel at 90 knots, it will take 4 minutes and 44 seconds to cross the DME and then arrive down at the ground. So we've got quite a bit of stuff to set up inside the simulator to make sure that we run this approach effectively. Another thing we want to think about, and I neglected to mention this with the ADF video, is what happens if we can't find the runway. We're going to have to go ahead and let's see here. We're going to do a climbing right turn to 2,500 feet at a heading of 100 until we get to Putnam VOR DME radial 265, and then we're going to go back to Rambo intersection. So basically we do everything all again if we do miss it. All right, let's get set up. So we're, of course, all set up. We're sort of hovering here. I don't need this GPS junk. Let's get that out of here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to tune in the correct frequency for the Hartford VOR. So it's going to be 114.90. I'll go ahead and swap that. Give it just a second. Now, if you remember, I said we need to come in on the 220 radial. I'm actually going to sit here and go doot, doot. Perfect. So I'm actually going to switch to nav mode almost immediately. Don't turn the automatic pilot on, however, because if you do that, you're going to find your trim is going to get extremely dangerously crazy. Let's go ahead and set that about 0. Otherwise, because I'm frozen basically in the air right now. So we're going to come down along that. We're going to reacquire this quickly. We're going to cross that station, run our offset. Our offset course is going to be 154 degrees. In case you're wondering where I got that from, you'll remember we're going to be coming along here, cutting through this and taking that left turn. This is going to be the opposite of this. So that's where our 154 is going to come from. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to preset that as well so I don't have to think about it. Set it to 154. Looks pretty good right there. That's exactly the way I'm going to like that. And then, of course, we should set our timer up as well. So I'm going to pop over to my timer real quick. Come down here. We're going to go set this up for 4 minutes and 44 seconds. That's how long it's going to take us to get from Hartford VOR all the way down to the ground, theoretically. So I'm going to come in here. I'm just going to go flip over to here. I said 44 seconds. Obviously, if you approach slightly fast or slightly slow, or there's a headwind or a tailwind, that could have a massive impact on your ability to do this safely. So kind of keep that in the back of your head also. Go ahead and use the cursor. I'm going to count down. And you know, while I'm here, I might as well set my minimums up as well. If you remember, our minimums in this particular case are going to be an altitude of 1,200 just about. So come in here. It's always fun to try to crank this. Come on. Dun, 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 dun. Of course, in the real plane, this is real fun because it's always bouncing around when this is happening. Lovely. All right, that's it. We are basically all set and ready to go. Let's go. So I'm going to go ahead and take control of the plane. I expect it to be a little uncooperative because of the fact that we just kind of took all that time to do all these other silly things. Let's get that out of the way, and let's go ahead and unpause. And let's start our descent. We're going to do a relatively aggressive descent here. Only on account of the fact we're so darn close. Go ahead and take our gentle left turn. Again, we're heading over to Hartford VOR. We just crossed the Rambo intersection, and we need to be all the way down to 2,500 feet. Boy, this is going to be a pretty aggressive descent. I feel really bad for the poor people inside this plane. Their ears would be blowing up about now. But again, eventually they'll give us the ability to actually choose the altitude we want to be at these things, but that's all right. All right, let's go into IFR mode, even though you've got a beautiful view of the ground and everything around us anyway. So what we're doing now is we're making our way down to the VOR station. Remember, when we cross it, we have to fly that weird incoming turn, that procedure turn. in order to basically get ourselves around. Now, in the real world, what they'll actually have to do there is when you do your little procedure turn, you'd have to actually follow that racetrack pattern as a hold until they actually gave you permission to actually land the aircraft at that particular point. Now, there's always a chance they're going to give you what they call radar vectors, where they'll actually guide you basically all the way down to the ground without having to put up with a lot of that kind of stuff. Unfortunately for us, we don't have that ability to do, at least for this demonstration. All right, looking pretty good. And we're drifting a little to the right. I find that if you use the navigation autopilot, checking out navigation, especially VOR, tends to be a little sensitive. One thing you want to watch out for, by the way, is that the radio station, in this case the VOR station you tuned in, is the correct one. In this case, is Hotel Foxtrot Delta, which we know to be accurate to what we want it to be. Now, one thing I'm going to do as we're on our way down here is I'm actually going to flip on my DME display. This is going to be very important. It's currently linked to 114.9er, which, no surprise, is exactly what we want it to be. It tells us we have about 6 nautical miles to go before we actually cross that station. Now, just like NDB stations, when we do cross that station, this needle is going to go quite funky on us, and this little arrow is actually going to flip. Come to my right. I'm actually just using my feet to do this, by the way, in case you're curious. I don't need this because, again, this aircraft's plenty sensitive enough at this speed. Very nice. All right, let's take a look at what we have as far as wind today goes. Okay, no surprise. We're getting that wind kind of from the side again. Nothing too annoying. It's basically coming right here. So we actually can go slightly to the right of this line in order to make sure we stay on it properly. All right, I'm going to swing to my left just a teeny tiny bit. That needle's about to get extremely sensitive on us. Remember, we're looking for an altitude of 2,500. I'll go ahead and set that in now. Beautiful. And then we'll go get worried about our minimums and all that stuff once we get a little bit closer. All right, get ready. So we're just about to cross the station itself. I actually want to be slightly to the right of the station. Now, when we do cross the station, we're going to have to reset the CDI to our incoming course of 334, but we're going to be flying the heading of this for about 1 minute's time. Again, that's that offset entry for the procedure turn. Procedure turns is a totally different video. Don't stress about it too much. We do want to be about 2,500 right when we get to that point. Looking pretty good, looking pretty good. It's a pretty nice day to practice this kind of a maneuver. Hey, where's the traffic? Yeah, it's never that not busy. All right, moving along here, moving along. One thing we do want to do as we're finishing up that procedure turn is we want to start getting ourselves to a speed a little bit closer to what's going to work better for us for our actual landing. So it looks like we're about 1,000 feet away, about 2 nautical miles from crossing over the station. The station in the real world is actually visible from the air. You can actually see it sitting on the top of a hill. It's kind of neat. But you can also see from our inset, which is cheating, that we're right about to cross the station. So things are actually working really well for us so far. I love it when a plane comes together. All right, swing to my left. The needle is going to get tremendously sensitive because we're getting so close to the actual position we're going to be. Looks pretty good there. I'm not actually going to go chasing that needle because I know I'm about to cross the station. I can tell right there. All right, here we go. And I think we're about to cross the station right at the same time we hit 2,500 feet. Hey, I'm not bad today. Pull the nose back up, let it stabilize, and we just crossed the station. Perfect. Yeah, I never get that lucky in the real world. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and give ourselves a standard rate turn to the left. What's a standard rate turn in this aircraft? If you actually take a look at this little pink line, see this little white line? If it touches that, that's a standard rate turn. As soon as we point on that offset course, we're going to time exactly 1 minute. Got to pull my nose up. We're starting to lose a little bit of altitude here. That's okay, though. All right, let's time a minute. That will be 9, 12, and 14. All right, get us back up to our correct altitude. We don't want to sink under our altitude. That could be tremendously dangerous. Come on. I always underestimate this aircraft's ability to stay at the altitude you put it. Looking pretty good. I'm actually going to flip on the automatic pilot real quick. Whoop. I don't think so. See, it tried basically to race itself back up to 2,500 feet. See it? So be really, really cautious with that sometimes because it will misbehave from time to time. All right, level ourselves back off. We have about 30 seconds before things are going to get interesting. I'll flip on the altitude hold button. There it goes. Okay. Thank you for not keeping the correct altitude. That's not quite how that works. Okay. Now while that's going, I'm going to set up my course. It's going to be 334. And we've just crossed our 1 minute turn. Now we're going to go ahead and pull ourselves all the way around. We're actually going to cross the course we need to be on, and then we're going to come all the way back around it and then come realign back to it. So right now we're taking our procedure turn to basically kind of come back around. We're going to cross this line. Don't worry about it too much yet, though. Set this to tree 4. You can see it's a lot of stuff here. Ah, see how we crossed it? So now we're just going to take ourselves a gigantic turn. Again, it's like almost like a reverse teardrop here. Going to come all the way around. And then we're going to realign with that course. Now, when we cross the station, we're going to have to start preparing for landing, which sounds a little crazy, but that's exactly how this would work, unless, of course, they actually want us to fly the hold, in which case we'd have to fly that racetrack pattern. So what I'm going to start doing is getting this aircraft ready for a landing. So if you're looking at things from the way they were a minute ago, we just went like this. And now we're coming around like this, trying to get back onto this line to line ourselves up for actual landing itself. All right. Speed's a little comfortable. I'm going to go ahead and drop my gear as well as my first notch of flaps. So now we're reacquiring the course of tree 4. The moment we cross the NDB, I should say the DMA, force of habit, we're going to go ahead and bring ourselves up to land the actual aircraft. That's also when we're going to have to activate our timer and see just how well we did today. We are definitely a little off course here. What I really don't want to do is cross the station exactly when we get our final approach fix. Because if we do that, then we're going to be in a fun situation where we basically have to force land the plane and line ourselves up at the same time. So really, instead of a minute out, I should have spent a little bit more time kind of cruising. But I'm not too worried about it because I'm fairly confident that I can come back around pretty well lined up here. Now, an interesting thing about this particular approach is the fact that because of the way this is set up, we're going to not land on the runway straight. You know, it's not like an ILS where you can just point straight at the runway and land on it. It's just not going to do that for us. Good. That's what I was hoping for. Beautiful. It's almost like I planned this or something. Weird. And flip on nav mode. Now, the interesting thing is I can actually press the approach button here, but the approach button is going to do nothing for me. All right, stand by. The moment this number starts getting bigger will tell me I have crossed the station. And that's when I have to activate my timer and begin my descent. It's going to be a 450 feet per minute descent. Ready? Easy. Remember, there's a crosswind coming from the left. Easy. Wait for it. Oh, I hate this part. Remember, DME reads slant distance. It doesn't read physical distance. Ready? Set. All right, timer started. Let's begin our descent all the way down to the ground. Remember, our minimum is 1,200 feet. Vertical speed mode. Nose down, down, down. Let's do it. Time to land the plane. So now what we're trying to do is we're going to try to keep this needle as centered as possible as we approach the ground, and we're going to start that gentle little descent. You're going to have to be fairly aggressive with your controls here. Make sure everything's set correctly. Double checking my flaps, double checking everything like that. If this timer runs out, and we're at 1,200 feet, and we don't see the runway, we're going to have to execute a missed approach. Now, in this particular case, a missed approach is going to involve us basically taking right back off again, cruising up to 2,500 feet on a heading of 100. So it's not too bad. All right, we're going a little fast. If we go a little fast, that's going to mess with us because we're going to end up getting there too soon, and that's going to wreck our approach. So you can see we're slightly off to the right of where we need to be. You can actually look out the window. Now, the neat thing is, since the visibility isn't bad, you can actually see the runway right there. If we wanted to actually drop it to the actual visibility that exists that we're supposed to have, let's say here, let's set it down to here. Let's do one of these. Whoa, don't do that. Do that. We'll set coverage to it. Ha-ha! That's a little better. We'll do 75% coverage here. Scatter 0. Ha-ha! Now things are a little bit more exciting. Ooh, I like this now. This is fun. So now what we're going to do is we're going to continue descending. The moment we hit 1,200 feet is going to be the moment that we can't go any lower. The other thing we're going to take a look at is what our timer is going to be. If we hit 1,200 feet and the timer is out and we can't find the runway, that's it. We're busted. In that case, it's a missed approach, and we probably shouldn't have done this particular approach like this anyway. Oh boy, this is going to be scary. All right, 3 minutes to go. And remember, if you're wondering where I got that time from, 90 minutes, 4 minutes, this X is the moment we hit our timer. Let's go back over here. All right, we're pretty well lined up. I'm going to start thinking about that missed approach already, though, because I don't know if this is going to work. Oh boy, keep an eye out for the runway. Speed is pretty good. I feel like we're not descending quick enough, though. Don't overdo it. Runway in sight. Ah, we got it. So now you just land the plane. Not bad, huh? So that's the basics of a VOR approach. Basically, it's a non-precision approach because you're not getting that nice up and down. At the same time, it's still fairly effective because you can see we were still able to discover the end of the runway even though we didn't actually know where it was, which is actually pretty cool if you think about it. Now, one of the problems we're going to have is, and this is going to be a real big problem, is I'm not facing the runway. The runway is actually like this. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to have to grab this little house right here and then swing around to the right to safely land the plane. But other than that, that's all there really was to this style approach. Automatic pilot disengaged. Double check everything. We'll do some gumples. We'll make sure we're set to the correct mode. I think I just shut my engine off. I hate this handle. It's so difficult to use in this one. Okay, that looks good. All right, swing to our left. All right, now we just have to land the plane conventionally. Now, if you look at our timer, we still have about 1 minute and 20 seconds before we're in trouble, but we would have been okay anyway because we were able to locate the airfield in that distance. So it actually worked out fairly well, and this ended up being a fairly effective approach. Now, in the real world, there's usually a lot of variables that we don't see. Things like, having spotty clouds or having precipitation, for example, that can really make this quite a bit more challenging. And it's also worth noting, like I said before, is look at how offset the runway is to where we actually arrived at the runway. This is very common for things like a localizer approach, an LDA, and SDF. Any of those approaches are going to tend to put you at a really funky angle to the actual runway you're trying to land on here. Give yourselves a little extra power. Yeah, look at that. Now, the idea here is if we lost sight of the runway and we kept saying, if we kept descending through the clouds, that's how you end up a part of one of those buildings over there on our left. Instead, we just go missed approach, go right back up to Rambo intersection, land the aircraft, would be in pretty good shape. But yeah, look at how far offset the actual approach is versus where the end of the runway is. That's tremendously offset. But remember, this is just about getting you to the runway. You still have to be the one who lands the plane. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and land the plane. Hey, how's Route 91 today? Not too bad. Now imagine if you forgot to do something like, I don't know, putting down your landing gear during all this process. Things would end pretty poorly. Also worth noting that my timer just ran out right as I arrived at the runway, so our timing was actually very, very good. Now, some VOR facilities are actually at the airport, in which case you can actually use the VOR to bring it all the way down to the ground, which is definitely a slick way to solve these things. But at the very least, we were still able to safely find where we're trying to go, and we were still able to bring the plane all the way down to the ground without scaring our passengers, mostly. And there we are. All right, folks, hopefully you found this video helpful. VOR approaches are still pretty common. You'll see them quite a bit. Most of them are on facility of VOR approaches, so you're actually going to have to show up to the airport from it. But this one was a great example of what that can look like when it's slightly off at an angle. Enjoy.